In modern geopolitics, wars are fought on two battlefields. The first is the kinetic theater defined by the thud of artillery, the tracks of main battle tanks, and the relentless buzz of FPV drones. But the second battlefield is invisible. It is the war for the human mind fought not with shrapnel, but with narrative. For over a decade, Vladimir Putin's most powerful weapon against Ukraine was not his nuclear triad or his hypersonic missiles. It was the Kremlin's multi-billion-dollar disinformation machine and the covert apparatus of the FSB. But by 2026, something fundamental has shifted. That invisible weapon has not just stalled, it has catastrophic failed. And the strategic fallout is now threatening the stability of the Russian Federation itself. To understand how this shadow front collapsed, we must look back to July 2014, the dawn of Russia's hybrid warfare in the Donbas. Russian state television Channel 1 broadcasted a horrifying testimony. A woman named Galina Pishnak claimed that Ukrainian soldiers in Sloviansk had publicly crucified a 3-year-old boy in the city square. The story was masterfully designed by ultra-nationalist ideologues like Alexander Dugin. It weaponized deep-seated Christian archetypes of martyrdom to strip Ukrainians of their humanity. It didn't matter that independent journalists quickly proved the story was an absolute fabrication. It didn't matter that the alleged Lenin Square in Sloviansk didn't even exist. The strategic objective was achieved laundering a military retreat into a moral crusade. Returning Russian volunteers explicitly cited the crucified boy as their reason for taking up arms. It was the gold standard of reflexive control shaping the enemy's operational environment by altering their perception of reality. But disinformation was merely the smokescreen. Beneath the surface, the Russian General Staff and the FSB were executing a far more sinister operational doctrine. Between 2014 and 2022, the FSB's 9th Directorate, the branch responsible for operations in Ukraine, poured staggering resources into building deep cover proxy networks. The strategic intent was clear: infiltrate regional security apparatuses, finance pro-Russian political factions, and cultivate asset networks capable of paralyzing Ukraine's command and control infrastructure from within. This is a classic textbook execution of Russian maskurovka and subversion. During the initial phases of the 2014 aggression, GRU Spetsnaz units and elite operators from Unit 29155, the same unit later linked to assassinations and sabotage across Europe, moved across the border without insignia. Commanded by figures like FSB Colonel Igor Girkin, they seized police stations and administrative buildings, manufacturing the illusion of a local grassroots uprising. By February 2022, Moscow's strategic calculus assumed that these years of internal subversion had left Ukraine hollowed out. The Kremlin's operational plan for the full-scale invasion, the seizure of Kiev within 72 hours, relied entirely on the assumption that pre-positioned FSB agents would trigger a systemic political collapse. FSB handlers had compiled extensive lists of collaborating officials ready to take power and identified key military units expected to defect. But this is where the entire intelligence apparatus suffered its most critical systemic failure. In the shadowy world of espionage, the deadliest trap is confirmation bias. For years, FSB agents and their paid informants inside Ukraine overstated their leverage to secure continuous funding from Moscow. Corruption and institutional sycophancy led to intelligence reports that told the Kremlin exactly what it wanted to hear: that Ukrainian society was fragmented, the military was weak, and the population would welcome Russian forces with flowers. Instead, when Russian armor rolled across the border, they ran headfirst into a hardened, highly cohesive society that had spent 8 years preparing for this exact existential threat. The covert architecture designed to guarantee a swift Russian victory vanished overnight. Rather than surrendering Ukrainian territorial defense units and intelligence services, systematically hunted down the pre-positioned safe houses and cut off the FSB's communications lines. Following this strategic disaster, the FSB was forced to pivot. No longer aiming for a grand political coup in Kyiv, they retreated into the grim realities of industrial-scale counterinsurgency in newly occupied territories like Mariupol, Melitopol, and Kherson. They deployed behind advancing artillery, trying to enforce governance through brutal surveillance, torture chambers, and fear. Yet even on this reduced front, the information balance of power had permanently shifted. By 2026, Ukrainian military intelligence officials noted that the penetration of Russian psychological operations into both Ukrainian and European information ecosystems had plummeted. After more than a decade of enduring hybrid warfare, the target audience had developed a psychological immunity. Outright fabrications that once paralyzed public debate are now instantly dismissed as background noise. As the Kremlin's offensive cyber and psychological campaigns lost momentum, Kyiv went on the offensive utilizing a highly surgical asymmetric warfare doctrine. While Russia relied on vast top-down bureaucratic propaganda, Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, the SSO, cultivated an agile decentralized resistance infrastructure deep within occupied territories. Operating under strict operational security, the SSO trained local partisan cells to conduct high-value target assassinations, logistical sabotage, and deep reconnaissance. Networks like ATESH, a pro-Ukrainian partisan movement, became a logistical nightmare for the Russian military. By targeting rail choke points and fuel depots across Kherson and Zaporizhzhia, these insurgent networks effectively restricted the Russian army's operational mobility, but Ukraine's asymmetric reach extended far beyond the occupied territories. It penetrated deep into the Russian heartland. Enter Operation Spiderweb. One of the most sophisticated long-range covert operations in modern military history. Over an 18-month period, Ukrainian operatives successfully infiltrated Russia's domestic logistics chains. They smuggled 117 FPV strike drones, across the border concealed inside commercial trucks carrying modular housing components. A deep cover operative established a legitimate front freight business in Chelyabinsk, quietly positioning these kinetic payloads within striking distance of Russia's most secure military installations. In mid-2025, the trap snapped shut. Coordinated drone strikes hit 5 strategic air bases spanning 2,500 miles from the Arctic coast to deep Siberia. The strikes severely damaged or destroyed 41 high-value aircraft, including 2 95 MS strategic bombers and rare A-50 airborne early warning jets. Open source intelligence estimated the material damage at over $7 billion. Russian military bloggers rightly called it Russia's modern Pearl Harbor. The FSB tasked with securing the state had failed to detect a massive drone network operating right under its nose for a year and a half. The old crucified boy narrative has been revived, updated with new fictional subplots and serialized content to provide the Russian public with a constant stream of manufactured Ukrainian villainy. This continuous radicalization is vital for the regime because the economic cost of the war is becoming impossible to hide. By 2026, Russia's defense budget consumes a staggering 40% of its national expenditure. To sustain this war economy, Moscow was forced to increase its value-added tax and drastically cut funding for domestic social infrastructure. Furthermore, Russia's arms export industry has practically collapsed, dropping by over 90%, as all manufacturing lines are cannibalized to replace catastrophic losses on the front lines. Simultaneously, the FSB continues to deploy digital subversion tactics to divide Ukraine from its Western allies. In May 2026, Russian bot networks flooded Western social media with over 21,000 highly targeted anti-migrant posts aiming to exploit internal political divisions in Europe and slow down the flow of military aid. In the final analysis, the information war has evolved. In 2022, many believed that presenting objective truth to the Russian public could stop the war. Today, geopolitics has moved past that illusion. Ukraine no longer fights to convert the Russian domestic audience. Instead, Kyiv fights to maintain its absolute credibility with the Western coalition, ensuring a continuous supply of high-tech kinetic weapons. Putin's secret front has collapsed because deception cannot indefinitely replace military competence, economic stability, or strategic reality. The Kremlin's propaganda machine may still convince its own people to march into the fire, but it can no longer alter the harsh geopolitical landscape of defeat. What do you think? Can an intelligence apparatus built on fear and fabrication ever win a prolonged war of attrition? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more deep dive military analysis. See you next time.